Living Crystals of Atlantis. Mark Hammonds, April 5, 1995, writes. Earlier this year one was blessed with a rather unique experience brought about by request from one of our illustrious number here, to whom I had offered a Christmas gift of any information I could obtain for him through the use of my sensibilities. Such offers are not made lightly, nor often, and I was frankly very surprised by his request. To the near contempt of his wife, I was asked not for winning lottery numbers but get this wisdom. What is in the hidden chamber located near the Sphinx? So, I went to have a look-see. I did not expect much, really, since I had not been curious before. And to my utter astonishment I encountered something so wonderful that it has, on reflection, changed my consciousness. If it can do this half a world away, what the physical presence of the thing can bring about will be as exciting a discovery as anyone could hope for. As the time draws upon us for the revelations of the ancient civilization that we summarize by the label Atlantis, I must first stop and pay homage to the great seer Edgar Cayce, who spent his life giving us glimpses of a vanished world for which until the future now at hand there would be little tangible physical evidence, and all of that misidentified or misinterpreted, either out of ignorance or outright malice. I did not believe Edgar Cayce for many years. I could read his words, like everyone else. But I did not ascribe any more reality to them than I did Edgar Rice Burroughs. In fact, I categorized them both simply as a pleasant read, and that was all. Nice visions, which could induce a wistful reverie replete with images from the now vanished series of Atlantis-themed movies that sprouted during the 1960s of my youth. How simple life used to be, when lasers existed only in B-grade movies, and channels were something selectable on television, and there were only 3. Now, I see what is upon us and I am relieved. Relieved to understand that someone who worked as hard for others as Edgar Cayce did by giving over his lifetime to trance states, a sacrifice, yes, to heal many people he would never meet, and receive largely poverty and ridicule for his trouble. I am also relieved to understand that, yes, my own time can be a fantastic one, where the forces of right can outweigh the forces of wrong, when the truth can come irrefutably to light, as is about to happen, indeed has already happened, and we wait only to be informed. What we call Atlantis is a Greek permutation of the sound atl. It is no accident that this same sound survived in the languages of the New World, either. It is perhaps the oldest sound on Earth with a continuous meaningful resonance. Much of the Greek story is true in a sense, but like the earlier chapters of the Judeo-Christian Bible, it is only a shadow of a former reality. The ancient Egyptians caught only the barest echo in their brief associations with the remnants of what were the Atlanteans, who were themselves only the distant descendants of the original settlers of that now almost vanished island continent. Only the incorruptible biological memories of some eels in their yearly progress from the European mainland to the Sargasso Sea serves as a living reminder of what was once their spawning estuaries. The Atlanteans, to use a word, were a race of non-physical beings in the sense that you are used to the notion of a body. They were non-corporeal mind streams, who could project themselves into the material world. You can think of them as aliens in that truest of senses, for they were not bipeds or monopeds. They floated about with, for lack of a better phrase, an atmosphere. And they came to Earth for reasons that we cannot even conceive. But in time they became attached to it, to the pleasures of life, moving from one organic body to another, and they got trapped. Like an addiction. In a narrative sense, they were seeds of a sort, but how do you talk in mental abstractions about something that was completely outside such gross and clumsy things as language? In any event, what concerns us is their gift, the lasting presence of their existence on the Earth which is about to come into our hands and minds. Atlanteans communicated by images. Spoken and written languages appeared only later, when their awareness of their original non-corporeal states disappeared. This happened because they liked sex, basically. When it is said that the division of the sexes came only recently, the cleavage, of what had been one androgynous mind stream became two male and female consciousness, even though the anthropoids into which they projected themselves, of course, already possessed these biological distinctions. When this division happened, there was a separation from direct awareness of their former existence. They became mired, and as they procreated their abilities became weaker and weaker. Remember, this is a very brief account of what is vastly more complex and detailed. Rather than communicate directly by mind-to-mind actuality, they found themselves using secondary images memories. They still had strong psi energies. Telepathy was to them what television is to us. In time, to their horror, they discovered that they could not contain all the memories that they wanted. We have just skipped about 50,000 years of history here, but I am wanting only to talk about what is being dug up on the Giza Plateau. For a while, Atlantean incarnations still had flashes of great spiritual power. It was in the use of this that the idea of the living crystals was conceived and executed. Exceedingly pure silicon was formed with certain trace metallic elements that interacted with the electromagnetic field of the Earth. These things were unutterably pure and vibrant. Their resonance was tuned to such a delicate pitch that these crystals could be impressed with the contents of an Atlantean mind, which was still exponentially more powerful than the current human one. In effect, lives could be deposited in these crystals as memories, something akin to a hard drive in our terms. The living crystals were made during only a brief period of time, before the decay of the Earth's magnetosphere because of their other technologies. While many were made, and they were housed with the greatest of reverence, they became in time the source of great contention, even vast bloodletting. Finally, most were either lost, hidden, or destroyed by quakes. But some few survived and were retrieved from their hiding places when it was clear that the end was near for their ancient civilization. One of these was taken to Egypt, where it was impressed with the conscious awareness of all their history, all their knowledge and what they could of their living culture. It is in this sense that the crystal is living, not that the crystal itself is biological. And it is this crystal that is about to be unearthed. Merely the presence of the human minds in contact with it will cause the activation of what is the equivalent of a radio broadcast. We will all hear what the crystal was left to tell us. No one can hide it, no one can deny you possession. Even the attempt to destroy it will fail, because the crystals are sacred in the purest sense. No one can act to destroy it, because that act is not possible toward the stone. Perhaps from this brief description you can see why they were so valued. There is no need to learn Atlantean. If you want, it will be in your head, full and complete. And you will know, through direct perception, what Atlantis was truly about. You will feel the terrific sadness they felt, the loss and the depression of failure. You will have the direct perception of how they saw the world, and the warning implicit in their Hall of Records. And you will understand the shape of the Great Pyramid, what it did, and why it was built. And you will feel the sadness that I feel, when I realize that the Golden Age is not a myth, that there once was a time when death did not walk the earth. Whatever part of you that contains remnants of that in your genes will resonate into the ability you are able, you will be resurrected, even in the flesh. Surprise, surprise. Living Crystals of Atlantis, 2. By request, some more information about the later Atlantean cultures, their technology, and what relevance this has to our own continuum. It is very hard to go far enough back in the time streams and experience the original Atlantean emergence. The probability currents for the aggregation of beings, both subtle and gross, biological, that make up the Atlantean line diverge. Since anyone able to understand these writings knows neither the past or the future has any inherently determinate existence without relationship to the present moment, this difficulty is visible. What is presently here about earlier Atlantean beings is derived from the last precessional cycle, approximately a range limit of 25,000 BCE, and is thus already restricted to linear modalities. The Atlanteans were very attached to their homes. This is not surprising because they originated from heavenly beings who projected their consciousness into this material world. Their whole thrust was into the establishment of points of focus and rotating their conscious awareness through the life cycle of different creatures. At first, they still had identification with their subtle bodies, that is that part of their consciousness that existed outside the space-time continuum they were exploring. Apparently they did this for the pleasure of it, like some people like jumping into cold swimming pools. It's great once you get in. So they took up bodies actually. At first, they took up species. Individual lives were beyond the very earliest Atlanteans. They experienced continuities, not objects. At first, they didn't even understand objective existence, only the rhythms of process. In true ego. To cut the story short, they kept going deeper and deeper, until many of them, not all, lost consciousness of the process of the larger order, the whole interlinked life of the planet, and started incarnating as herds, flocks, whatever, until they lost multidimensional consciousness altogether and individualized. Even then, they could pass from one individual body to another. They thought this was great progress. Death was still incomprehensible to them. After assuming individual form, they had decided on a particular anthropoid for the base. They used their great mental powers and recreated the creature into a pattern they felt was superior. They informed the creature, and by their presence disrupted the natural evolution of the beings. Some were more successful or interested than others at this adaptation. Some of the newly made beings were deformed, that is, the Atlantean mind in attempting to merge the energies mistook or did it deliberately for fun the form, and there were altered creatures with wings, hooved legs, etc., part human, part beast. Few of these were fertile, but because they had been created with higher orders of energy they lived for very long periods of time. The very first Atlanteans were physically very big. The so-called giants of the Bible, the myths of the Titans, are all reflections of these events. The greater the power of the informing corporeal, the longer the life of the individual being. Some of them lived for 1,000 or more years in the same body. They got to liking it, and eventually the embodiment inside a furnace of life which they felt intensely, and that was why they were drawn into biological forms in the first place. They got developed a preference for the same form. Psychologically, this was characteristic of everything they did. Even as they continued what we think of as a descent, or falling out of heaven, they were thrilled with the apparently endless possibilities of temporal embedment. They were also physiologically fragile. Without the great powers of the indwelling non-corporeals, these forms could not survive in the natural biosphere. For this reason, a special environment was created for them, a large continental landmass informed by their minds from the Earth's substance. It is this now vanished surface that we call Atlantis. It is interesting to note that there was already at this time a separation of the Atlanteans into two continua. There were those who stopped going further into the biological receptacles, and kept their greater mind powers. There were those who plowed right ahead with ever-increasing fascination and sensuality. Early on, these beings were very